Welcome, welcome, welcome to One Take Wine. What are we even doing here? Taking a look at an interesting producer, Telmo Rodriguez, and one of his wines called As Caborcas. Some wild bush grape varieties, of which Mencia plays a pretty big role, but there's Godello, there's even a little Garnacha, I think. It's a very interesting site. They used to talk about it being Grand Cru. I don't know that they're that good, but they are very good. They're unlike any other wine, really, that's sort of commercialized as far as I'm concerned. They have their own little sweet spot. They're worth picking up every year if you do see them, but there's only like 2,500 bottles or 3,000 bottles produced. Today I'm going to do the 14, the 15, and the 16. Let's see what the difference is between three vintages so close to each other from such a unique wine and unique winemaker. What are we waiting for? Let's get at it. First wine, what do we get in the glass? This is starting to show its age a little bit. It's starting to break in color. The nose is very, I've had it chilled a little bit. I wanted it a bit chilled because it was a bit shrill last night when I opened it. A little high tone, not particularly deep in terms of body character, but all of these wines, they share some traits. Very herbal. They have a very bright, crunchy fruit, ranging from black cherry and blueberry to lingonberries. And yeah, that's what's happening here too. There's quite a licorice load, I think, in almost all of them. And then you get this kind of, where the difference is made up is in the depth of the mid body. I think the length a little bit. They tend to be medium length, I would say. I wouldn't go, they're not too long, but they're long enough that you're not going to be able to ignore them towards the end. Maybe even a little orange zest in there. And then that licorice, because there's such an herbal note to this, very strong herbal note to these wines, medicinal type of quality to it, which I find quite refreshing. It's not going to be to everybody's tastes, but I quite like it. 13 was one of my favorite vintages of As Caborcas. I really loved it. I thought it was a deeper, a richer wine, really well made. It still has tons of balance. It's still going very, very strong, even, what are we now, 12 years down the road from that vintage. But 14 it doesn't have that depth. It certainly doesn't. It's a much lighter styled wine. It feels like it might have been a challenging vintage. Lovely though, some mushroom notes, some earth notes. Quite tannic, this one, compared to some of the others. I don't think that they're always that tannic. Not my favorite style for As Caborcas because it lacks the exuberance of maybe some of the other vintages. And at the same time, it's very good. If you've got some, there's no rush. You don't need to open them right now. You can wait and you'll enjoy it for sure. What do we got in the glass? This is a darker color. And at the same time, it's almost muddy. It's definitely not a filtered wine, that's for sure. Almost a Twizzler and a Northern Rhone type of nose to it. Some rubber. Here we've got a much rounder fruit. This is where the dark cherry fruit comes in a little bit more than the cranberry, you could say. Then aromatically, just a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more unctuous. Kind of important that it has a warmer caress to it because these wines, even a little touch of bouillon, these wines they're very high toned already. By nature, they're fairly shrill, but then you might get these vintages. This is one of them. 18 is another one. 13 is another one where the fruit is rounder and more suave, more velvety. Very delicious. That's the 15. I don't know how many bottles were produced. 3,623. So hey, you might be in luck. There's an extra 1,000 of them. What do we got in the glass? This is much younger in color. It shares some of the same characteristics as the 15 on the nose. A bit sweeter, maybe a little more candied in the fruit. These have been opened overnight, all three of them. Yeah, and that was my impression yesterday as well. It's a much lighter. It definitely does not have the body, that sort of luxurious feel that the 15 has. It feels very like it might have been a watered down sort of year. I'm not too sure. I haven't checked up on 16. Every vintage I've ever seen of this wine, from the that's been scored by the Parker site has been ridiculously high, over 95. So this probably got that highest score, and it certainly doesn't. It's not it's a 90, 91 typer. Still great though. I wouldn't hang on to these too long. I would drink these up. But characteristic sort of herbal licorice type thing, that rucola type thing, some other sort of wild herbs, some tobacco leaf for sure. They all have a bitter tobacco leaf to them. I think this is also a little bit more black cherry than the 14. Quite warm, a little bit of rubber, a little bit of the warm pavement type thing to it. Bit tannic, a little earthier maybe. Still very nice. It's hard to say that any of these wines are bad because they're not. They're all just slightly different versions of each other, and sometimes the fruit is a little brighter, sometimes the mid palate's a little more rounded and a little bit more lush, like the 15 for instance, and then sometimes, you know, I would say this is the weakest of those three vintages. Either way, can't go wrong. Man, that's good stuff. There's the bottle in case you need to see it. So what have we learned? Well, we've learned that As Caborcas, doesn't matter what the vintage is a very unique wine. The uniqueness of the character, the uniqueness of the site, and the transparency of it, in the sense that a lot of, I think, the wildness of it comes through. I don't think any of these vintages have been exactly the same or even all that similar to each other, and at the same time the core elements are. So it's a recognizable but a very distinct wine across all of these vintages. They're hard to describe compared to anything else because they have that high pitch. I don't know if that's got to do with how far north they are in Spain, at least, but apparently it's a little bit of a microclimate right around the river. He hasn't replanted and pulled out everything. I think he's left all the wild bunches and all the native grape varieties sort of proliferate, and some of the vines apparently are young, and some of them are 80 years old, and some of them are high up, and some of them are low. You know, there's no rhyme or reason to this, that is reflected in the character of the wine. So a lot of fun. Anyway, if you see these, give them a shot. They're definitely worth it. Even though they're very scarce, they're maximum 50 euros a bottle, which, yes, I know is a lot of money for a bottle of wine, but not for fine wine. Especially if you're used to the traditional French and Italian sort of offerings. This is just like such a walk on the wild side that you'll really appreciate the journey here. So that's what I have for this time. Have you tried these? That'd be great to hear your notes. I could also go through all the other vintages that I've tried of these, and I do have them noted. So if you'd like to see that, ask for it in the comments, or you have a particular question, I can summarize my notes and supply my thoughts on those. Any other comments, always appreciate it. Good to hear from you. Thanks for stopping by. Stay thirsty, and we'll see you again real soon.